Welcome to the Austin Zaback Show, where every guest is meant to leave listeners inspired and motivated, propelling them to pursue their passions and live up to their full potential.
I can show people without any training whatsoever how to be dangerous in a very short amount of time. It'll probably get you fired from your job, but you'll be alive even if 4 or 5 people are coming after you. All the guys that I've worked with, whether they're Special Forces guys in Ecuador, Navy SEALs that I've had the privilege to interact with and work with, or CIA operatives, they still have fear. Your job is to function in spite of it. It's about learning how to leverage it. If you weren't supposed to have it, God wouldn't have given it to you. We have power to do things inside of our professions. We're chosen. We're called to be great. But we can only understand that when we accept our divine design and we stop living as men at a low bestial behavior. I sit down all the time and people go, I want to be a ninja. I want to look like you. No, you don't. No, you don't. Because if you wanted to look like me, you'd be willing to do what I do to look like me.
Welcome back to another episode of the Austin Zaback Show. Today we have a guest that you're going to want to stay to the very end of the podcast for. This is going to be an awesome interview. We had a chance, Michael, to talk a bit before the show. We've got Michael Johnson on the show, and I feel like a good one-liner for you is like from homeless to owning a helicopter. You know, it's like a good little one-liner, right? And are you the pilot of the helicopter, by the way? Or
I am now. Yeah,
okay.
I became a pilot about 3 weeks. 10 weeks ago.
Okay.
It was actually right before I met her.
There you go. Wow, I love that.
I met her the day after.
Okay, there you go. Have you taken her in the helicopter yet?
She's not super big on motion.
Okay.
She's like, I'm going to vomit all over this thing.
We'll get into that in a little while. But you know, you're known for many things. You're an entrepreneur. You're known for training, police officers, people in the Army. I mean, you have really an extensive background on, what do we want to call it? Personal defense. How would you describe how you kind of, have trained and done combat and stuff for 20 years?
I started when I was 2.
Wow.
I'm 43 now. My dad started when he was 12, and he was one of the original students of Bruce Lee, lived and trained at his house off and on from 67 to 69. And then my grandfather started him when he was probably 11 or 12. And then my grandfather started when he was about 11, 12 years old. That's the only thing he did for himself. Black, back in the 20s, super racist time. Both of his parents left, and that was the only thing he did for himself was the martial arts. So he quit school so he could take care of his sister and put her through school, and the martial arts is the only thing he did for himself. And then when he met my dad's mom, he came into the picture, took over him as a son, and raised him, taught him martial arts, and then our family so we've been doing this for 3 generations. So I started when I was 2, and if I were to put it in a one-liner, it'd be understanding fear and conquering it.
I like that a lot. Yeah. We all have fear, right?
We do.
Yeah. Do you think that there's a world where you get to a point where you're fearless? I mean, is that a thing, or do you just learn how to manage it eventually?
Look, it's a cool T-shirt, but I don't think anybody's fearless. At the end of the day, And there's a lot of people that push through this, right? Like, you've got to learn to leverage fear, because fear is a useful weapon if you can manage it and it not manage you. So when you get to a point, like you fear things differently. Like the first underground fight I did, I was terrified. The 55th time I fought, and I think now at the point I'm at now, I probably have 80 or 90 fights underneath me with the guys that I fought. There's just different things, right? Like, you don't fear the same thing. So fear is always present. You're just trying to create a new level of fear, right? So at one point, when you first started doing your career, you're probably afraid of being able to pay the rent. Then there becomes a fear of losing all that you've amassed. And then there becomes a fear of not leaving a legacy, right? So fear, if it controls you, it's fear. If it doesn't control you, you can inoculate yourself to it with little bits and pieces to it, and then you start to build a taste for it and use it as fear. Not fear, but fuel.
Sure.
And there's a lot of people that try and say, get fearless. All the guys that I've worked with, whether they're Special Forces guys in Ecuador or Navy SEALs that I've had the privilege to interact with and work with, or CIA operatives, they were actually special agents for the CIA, they still have fear, right? Your job is to function in spite of it. So it's not about getting rid of it. It's about learning how to leverage it. If you weren't supposed to have it, God wouldn't have given it to you. So you have it for a function, for a leveraging tool to use against the element of you getting complacent, right?
Yeah.
So that was a very long answer
No,
to
I
your
love that.
question, but that would be my answer.
Feel free to answer as long as you want. You know, it's interesting. I think about like, I don't know, think a couple hundred years ago, right? And we think about, okay, there's a lion in front of you, you know, and, you know, the innate human instinct is like, holy shit, I'm going to get eaten by a lion, right? And it's that fight or flight, right? Do I fight or do I run, you know? And like listening to you kind of talk, it's like, okay, we need the fear as human beings. We're, like you said, you know, God gave us that fear because really to protect us, to keep us alive.
Well, not
right?
even that as much, right? Like it's all about controlling the controllables. Because there's men that run from lions, there's men that get eaten by lions, and then there's men that kill lions. And all three men can be the same man. It's the man that learned to face where he was at when he was there. And this is why one of the reasons, you know, at Shockwave, we have a very different psychology in that, like, we use profanity when we need to get a response. We use shock value when we need to get a response. We use gentleness and love when we need to get a response. I got 2 rules in my school, and you just broke one of them, but that's all right. Don't say holy followed with profanity.
Yeah.
Don't say God's name in vain. And then respect everyone that's in your circle, right? So when you're sitting there and you start going, like, what is this about? It's about temperance. How do you control the controllables? So if I looked at you and I said, what are you afraid of? You give me an answer. What's your biggest fear right now?
Right this second?
Right this second.
I don't know that I'm fearful of much right now. I suppose in my life right now, it would just be death.
Okay.
Not that I'm close to dying, but I mean, I think we all have a fear of death, you know, like when we project into the future.
We don't all have a fear of death. You can learn to manage that, right? So it's like, if you're not afraid of other things in life, you're not stretching yourself enough. There comes a point, flying a helicopter is extremely terrifying, especially when you're first learning. There's a million ways it can go wrong quick, and you have like a second and a half to fix it, or it's an uncorrectable error, at least in my aircraft, which is an R-44. So when you sit down and you look at it and you go, okay, I need to face this. It's scary, right? Especially the first time you do an auto rotation, which is practicing when the engine fails, and you got to do a lot of things right, or it can go bad real fast and it can be uncorrected, right? Uncorrectable error. So it's stretching it. Now the fear of death is, what is about death that makes you afraid?
Well, I guess, you know, when I said that, I started to think, I was like, okay, there's obviously an underlying thing there, right? And it's probably what you said a little while ago. It's like the fear of like not living out like my full legacy, or not. It's like the fear of dying before I'm able to accomplish my goal. Right?
Excellent.
Yeah.
See, that's the sub-desire. And so one of the things we want to hunt is warriors is, what is our sub-desire? We're not hungry. We need nourishment. And then we addict ourselves to the hunger to remind us to fulfill the habit so that we don't die.
Yeah.
The construct of learning how to leverage these sub-desires is what takes you to the next level. So I don't care when I die, as long as I fulfill what God sent me here to do. Because what I'm afraid of is standing before God and not having fulfilled what he sent me to fulfill, or disappointing him and my mission wasn't accomplished, right? So at the end of the day, when we sit down and we look at death, there is no death. If you believe in God, then there's a resurrection, right? So if we died with Christ, we resurrected with Christ. And this is a powerful tool to take into combat with you, right? So when you go into combat, they can't kill you. You're already dead, and you've already resurrected. They can just destroy your body. And I don't know how the other side works, but I'm willing to actually try to go after you on that side as well, right? Like
if I can,
you know, you just keep going, right? So
Yeah.
it's a mindset of, how do we get our head into a game that nothing can conquer us, but our fears are more integral with alignment with the full cause of what we're supposed to have on this world.
And how do you accomplish that, right? Like when you're teaching, you talk about teaching CIA operatives, you said CIA, all Navy SEALs, Army, FBI, I don't know. I'm sure you've trained whole lots of people, right? You know, how do you teach that? Because like me, for example, you know, I've never done any sort of combat or anything like that. But, you know, I'm an entrepreneur. I've started 12 companies or so. You know, I've employed over 1,000 people. I've failed a lot. And I've been fearful.
You learned.
1,000,000%. I failed forward, right? I learned. Yeah, I grew. But, you know, there have been many times in my life where I've been fearful, right? And I've tried meditation and whatever I could possibly do to like, move past the fear. And I feel like I've done an okay job. I don't know if you know this, but the majority of the views that we get are from people that are not subscribed. So do me a huge favor and subscribe if you like the podcast so far. Smash the like button for the YouTube algorithm, and let's just go ahead and get back to the interview. But with that being said, I'd love to know your tactics. Like when you sit down with somebody, say CIA operative, whoever, how are you? What are the principles, or what's the structure of helping them overcome that and live? Because what you just said sounds amazing, right? But how can everybody watching or listening, accomplish that?
So there's threefold to this. The first thing what I'll do is I'll explain the people that I've worked with so that it makes sense, right? So I went out to the Department of Corrections, and I went out there when I was doing an event. It was like a trade show. And at the time I had braids in my hair down in the middle of my back, and my hair was green. And I'm at this law enforcement conference, right? And two guys come over, and I'm still friends to this day with Dennis Taylor. He's an amazing human being, great guy. And he comes over, and he's like, let's go check this guy out and mess with him, right? So he comes over, he's like, what do you do, right? Like I'm deep in the South because I'm North Florida. Okay. And the farther north you go in Florida, the farther south you get, right?
Sure,
and clearly I do not fit in, right? In this environment. So he comes to me, and he's like, so what is it that you do? And I said, well, what I do is pretty effective. I can show people without any training whatsoever how to be dangerous in a very short amount of time. It'll probably get you fired from your job, but you'll be alive even if 4 or 5 people are coming after you. He goes, all right, son, let me tell you something. First off, we're going to work on your delivery. Secondly, when is your class? Because I'm coming to it.
That's too funny.
Next thing I know, within a week, I've got my first contract with the Department of Corrections, and within a month, we're training over 100 instructors to go disseminate this knowledge to 19,000 officers in the Department of Corrections, which is the biggest law enforcement agency in the state of Florida. And that was a gift, right? Because before that, I'd worked with individuals, everybody from the 512th Rescue Squadron, the 459th Airlift Squadron down in Tokyo, Japan. I've trained the SEER School for the United States Air Force. I trained their instructors, I think it was last year. I trained the South African Tactical Response Team, the Ecuadorian Special Forces. I had a gentleman that was just an amazing human being. He was a PJ. I trained him for a while, and then he disappears. And I'm like, what the freak? Where'd you go, dude? He comes back 7 years later. He's like, I got recruited into the CIA as a special agent, and now I'm countering human trafficking. And so we support that group a great deal. He's an amazing human being. He's a great guy. And that group, just FYI, if you guys haven't checked out Deliver Fund, you should check them out.
Deliver Fund?
Deliver Fund.
Okay.
Yeah, they're an amazing group, and they go after human traffickers, and they shut them down from the top down.
Wow.
Just a really good person, right? So I said that to kind of give you a scope of the people that I'm working with. So some of them are already trained. Like the guys that I trained in the Department of Corrections were the CERT, Rapid Response, ERT, K9. They're all the special teams guys. Special teams guys trained the rest of the officers. But I'll also get people that will come to me that are corporate executives like yourself that are smart enough to realize that business is war.
Yeah.
Right? Like there's still an army. There's still counterattacks. There's counteroffensives. There's social engineering. There's hacking. There's all these different things that pop in, right? But at the end of the day, it comes back to this concept of fear. Like you were talking about, how do we inoculate ourselves against it? And the first way to do that is to understand that you're not human. See, we come in this form, and we're born into the flesh, which is the born into the sin, but we existed before we came here, right? And Scripture talks about that. You're more than human. And you have to start looking at your divine design. So if I drew 2 circles, I draw one circle and then another circle, and I say, this is your father, this is your mother, and the 2 circles intersect, and I draw a line down, and I say, this is the child. What is the child a byproduct of?
I mean, in that scenario, the father and the mother, right?
Right, in that scenario.
Yeah.
The reality is, I don't believe that your parents on this earth are really your parents.
Right.
Right? Like you picked them before you came here so that you could archetype yourself into the conditioning that you needed in order to fulfill the mission that you were sent here to fulfill. So when you look at that and you actually read what Scripture says, let us make him in our image, that first circle is actually divine. It's Elohim. It's the maker. And when you look at mankind and you look at the way that we're engineered and how we're designed, they can find over 97% of what's in stars inside of men.
Wow.
And when I say men, I mean mankind. So now your mother is the universe. We're literally the universe incarnate. And your father is divine. So now when those 2 circles intersect, what is the child?
I mean, divine, right?
You're the universe incarnate with a divine spark inside of you, called to be great, called to go out and live in the image of the living maker. You're not God. And a lot of people confuse this. They're like, so they think they're God. And you're like, you're not God. Try being that for a day and let's see what happens, right? Like he's going to humble you real quick.
Yeah.
But you are God-like. You know, if a apple tree, like you're ever going to get oranges off an apple tree? So what you get is the universe incarnate with divine. So an apple tree is going to give you apples. God is going to create in his image a God. So when we understand that, all knowledge is inside of us.
Sure.
How to conquer things, how to overcome things, how to behave differently. The reason you feel a pulling to live your mission is because you actually are connected to the Most High. So when you look at that and you start looking at that psychology and you drive into that deeper, you go, how do I overcome fear? Where the first thing is, fear is from the devil. It's not from God. So fear is the weakness of the mind, allowing you to start looking at, you know, you're too much in the flesh when you start thinking about fear. It's still helpful. It's a useful tool. But when you start fearing success, when you start fearing, you know, man, my wife could leave me, my wife could leave, that's from the enemy. So what you do is you tap into the higher level and you start understanding that fear is a motive that is going to move you down a direction. So you inoculate yourself to fear. You find things you're terrified of. I used to have a huge fear, like, of heights. I was like, dude, I don't like heights. So I went skydiving a couple of times. It gets rid of it real quick, right?
Yeah.
Used to have a fear of going fast. So I got a motorcycle, started learning how to drive at 160 miles an hour. I had a fear of cobras, so I got a pet cobra. I got an albino monocle cobra, and I learned how to handle her.
Yeah.
And then, you know, she was kind of a dick. She kept trying to bite me. So I was like, all right, I probably need to leverage this a little bit, you know, and I had a dream. 3 of my friends had dreams that she had bit me in like a 24-hour period. And I was like, I'm going to take this as a sign, right? Got rid of the snake. Had a fear of sharks. So I got on the water with sharks. How do you get past your fears? You inoculate yourself to them.
You face them, right?
You face them. You get yourself to a point where you start off lightly. A lot of people are like, I've never been in combat. I'm afraid of getting hit. Well, I think most of that's vanity, right? Like most people are afraid of getting punched in the face and having 2 black eyes and getting all cut up. But at the end, getting hit in the face doesn't hurt that bad. I mean, it depends on what you get hit with. But at the same time, it's like you're not really afraid of fighting. You're afraid of not being able to deal with pain. And the only way to grow is to learn how to face pain. And there are a few ways of doing that other than getting hit in the face or hit in the body with a stick.
Yeah.
Right? In the underground fights, we fight with sticks, chains, chairs, you know, like freaking bull whips. I've watched guys fight with all sorts of different stuff. We were fencing mask and a cup and a mouthpiece.
Yeah.
And you go at it. And there's no rules, there's no judges, there's no refs. And we used to do that for a while. Right now, and I'll be honest, I haven't done it for a few years now, probably about 3 years, because me and my team, over pressure combat, we would still do it. But as I'm flying the helicopter, if you get a hand broken, you can't fly.
Yeah.
And there's things that you just start to like more, right? Like, look, I love fighting, but I really love flying. That's an amazing feeling of freedom. So you step into the realm of what you're afraid of until it no longer makes you scared. And then it's probably time to graduate from that to your next fear.
Got it. Yeah. One of the biggest phobias in the world, I believe, right now is public speaking. Right?
I don't understand that.
But, I mean, if I were to Google it right now, I'm fairly confident, don't quote me. If you're watching, don't quote me. It's either like number 1 or number 2. Yeah. It might be heights and then public speaking. She's nodding her head. I think I'm right. But, okay, so I'm curious as to your take on that, right? Because how you just talked about, okay, getting hit, right? The real fear is the underlying, you know, almost like what I'm going to look like, right?
Yeah.
So what is it for public speaking? Because like the fear can't be, because I'll just be honest with you. I mean, I'm to a degree, like if you told me right now there's 1 billion people watching us live right now, it wouldn't bother me, right? But if you put me on a stage, okay, like in physically in front of, you know, 2,000 or 3,000 people, my heart beats a little bit. I'm not gonna lie. You know, when I walk out there, I'm like, oh God, you know. But if you were to ask me in that moment, what are you afraid of, Austin? Right? I honestly don't think I'd be able to tell you. I'm just afraid, and I don't even know why. I'm like, my body is just reacting. I'm having this like reaction, right?
This visceral response.
And what is it? I mean, am I afraid of dying on the stage? I mean, that can't be it.
So there's an anthropologic level to that, right? Of the historic concept of being outcasted from the tribe, and then tribe leads to death, right? So, or outcasting of the tribe leads to death. So what I would, and I'm sure for different people it's different, but the first thing I would say is face your fears before you have to get into the fear, because in the moment, you're never going to make the right decision.
Right.
Right? Like I know a lot of guys are like, yeah, if I get tempted tonight when I go out with this girl, even though I'm married, then I'll just fight it then. You're like, you already know that this is going to go bad, right?
Yeah.
Like, don't be a dumbass. Put yourself in a position where you face it before you have to get there, right? So the fear of speaking on stage and actually having to channel in and hone into your who you are as a warrior, I think would say something along the lines of that sub-desire may be being the outcast. And one of the greatest things of dealing with rejection is get comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yep.
Right? Like when you learn, this is why I think combat is so powerful. And in our day and age now, because everything's so metrosexualized and calmed down so we don't hurt anybody's feelings, which is like utter bullshit, right? Like people are, you're offending me, so you better not say that or else I'm going to, and even like with the profanity, some people go, couldn't you say the same thing for you? It's not about me being offended. It's about respect and having a level of, I asked you before we started this, I'm like, what would you like me to stay away from? And you're like, pretty much nothing, right?
Yep.
So I did that out of honor, right? It's like if you have a belief system, and I feel like this is part of my own faith, if you are around people that don't eat meat and you feel like it'll offend them for a cause that is honorable to bring them to the truth, then don't eat meat.
Sure.
Right? So at the level of what it is today, it's not about that. It's just about not being able to handle your feelings and not being able to manage your feelings, which is the exact opposite of what it takes for men to become men. In order for men to become men, we must face what we're uncomfortable with, and we must face it at the risk of losing our lives. Like you look at some tribes in Africa and they release the kids, just like Spartans, and they're like, hey, if you come back, you come back. Like there's acceptable losses.
Yeah.
That's the problem with our culture is we've accepted too much. We've become too tolerant. Now, if you tell me you're a donkey, I have to sit there and play along with it, even though you have something going on in your head. You're offended, and it's a hate crime on my part if I don't accept your donkeyism because it could offend you. Like, I just don't give a shit anymore.
Yeah.
Like, I'm at a point in my life where I'm like, I get it. There's something wrong with your head. Cool. I'll pray for you. I don't hate you, but I'm not going to sit here and play along with your lunacy because you want me to play along with it. So going back to speaking on stage, we are not comfortable being the outcast. And combat used to have this high revered methodology to it. And you know why? It's because when you study combat, every other trade falls below it. Because when you are not afraid of getting killed, when you are not afraid of executing killing, if you have to under the right conditions, nothing can touch you. Like speaking on stage is irrelevant.
Yeah.
Because you get out there and you're like, what are you guys going to do? Hit me? Like mob mentality, you guys might come after me, but I'm going to take a few of you with me. Right? So it's like, it's this whole different realm of, this is why martial artists and warriors and people that think along the lines of conflict and they're interested in managing conflict, they're so strong. The sub-desire is the outcast. It may not even be a real fear. It's something that anthropologically is in your genetics of like, hey, if I get cast out, then people will reject me and I won't be able to work and I won't be able to have my life and I'll get canceled and people won't listen to my podcast and
all that subconsciously. You're not
all
even
of it's
thinking
happening
of it.
subconsciously.
Yeah.
But when you face it and you go, if you guys don't accept me, that's okay. I'm not here for the 3,000. I'm here for the 300.
Yeah.
I'm here for the 300 that need to hear this message. I'm here for the 300 that are going to stand with me in the day of battle that are stronger than the 3,000, right? Like you look at Gideon's men, you look at the Battle of Thermopylae, you look at these different types of mindsets of warriors. If people are in the hive mind of functioning in unity, they are very, very dangerous, even if there's not many of them, right? This is why the mob mentality becomes so dangerous. They start functioning in a hive mind, but it's low frequency. Hive mind at high frequency is super, super powerful. Right? When you get that hive mind of high frequency, you start functioning at a totally different level. Because now we're all focused on something beyond this world, beyond this life, like the future generations to come. And we are effing that up big time now.
I couldn't agree more.
You look at what's going on with the kids of this day and age, and they're so freaking confused.
Terrible.
Like, we won't let them have guns. We won't let them make choices on voting. We won't let them make choices on a ton of stuff. We're like, you could cut your nuts off. What's the worst that can happen?
Right.
I mean, criminy, dude. Like that kid is like, that's gonna, and if you look at the statistics in the research that they are doing, these kids are killing themselves because of decisions that they're making. And that type of, like, there's a mental health issue going on with this country right now. And I don't believe in, and I'm not a doctor, but I don't really believe in mental health as much as demonic possession. And when we don't sit down and start articulating, and I'm not saying that people can't take medications that help interfere and interrupt that neurological behavior and the medical condition, but what I'm saying is that there is something deeper than that and more powerful than that going on, and that when we actually look at it from a standpoint of what if we learned what the Russians figured out back in the 40s, which is that like if you fast for 30 days, it cures like 98% of most diseases.
Yeah.
Why? Because the body starts eating itself and it'll eat whatever is there that's not a sustainable thing that's going to help you live. Fasting's a big part of our wellness. Meditation's a big part of our wellness. Mental discipline is a huge part of our wellness. So standing on stage and speaking to somebody.
Hey, really quick, I'm sure you already know, but I've done over 2,500 wholesale deals in my career, and me and my team consistently do anywhere from 1 to 2 wholesale deals a day. If you're looking to get better at wholesaling, or maybe you're brand new, you've never wholesaled a deal, I would actually love to coach you. I would love to mentor you, and I would love for you to be a part of our education program. All you have to do is go to www.flippinsimple.com, or you can find a link in the description down below and book a strategy session with my team to see if you would be a good fit for our coaching program. Again, this is our exact strategy and formula of how we are actually able to go out every single day and do anywhere from 1 to 2 wholesale deals a day. Nobody's talking about what we're doing, and I really look forward to coaching you and mentoring you. So again, go to www.flippinsimple.com. Now let's just go ahead and get back to the show.
Becomes more of what is your mission.
Right.
And the only reason that you'd have fear standing on stage is because you're not in alignment with your mission and for the people that you're there to reach.
Sure.
Right? And so when I get on stage, and I've spoken in front of a lot of people, I'm like, this is about me touching the hearts and the spirits of those that I'm here to reach. And if God puts one person that keeps from killing themselves because I spoke to him, and I've had multiple people come and they're like, dude, before I heard you talk today, I was going to off myself. You just gave me a second chance at life. I'm like, I didn't do anything.
Right.
The Lord did that for you.
Sure.
I'm glad that the message worked, but that's why I'm there.
Yeah, he was working through you.
He was working through me. And I don't care if you're selling real estate.
Yeah.
I don't care if you're selling Twinkies. Whatever you do as though you're doing it for God, because he put you in that position so you can do it for God.
Agreed.
Right?
Yeah.
And you may sell a house, but what you really sold was something much deeper.
Yep.
You sold something that moved an entire, like there might be 5 generations of kids that live in that house.
Sure. Yeah.
Right? And that was your doing. And you brought this person in and you gave them an opportunity to do something that maybe wasn't otherwise possible.
Yeah.
But because God put you in that moment, at that time, you affected 7 generations of that family to house them. How many homes were sold to people that ended up becoming Underground Railroad homes to free slaves?
Sure.
They didn't think it was just selling a house. They thought it was just selling a house, but what did it become? An entire movement through history to free people that were being oppressed and demonized when they shouldn't have been.
Yeah.
So we have power to do things inside of our professions. We're chosen. We're called to be great. But we can only understand that when we accept our divine design and we stop living as men at a low bestial behavior where everybody's about, I'm going to watch the football game. Look, I get people like sports, but you're literally watching other people go do something you should be doing.
Yeah.
Right? So you're more into entertainment.
Yeah.
Right? Like, do you want to watch this with me? No, I don't. You want to go outside and do it? Like that, I'm down for.
Yeah.
But we've become so bestial in our behavior. So many men are just, all they care about is sex. Like I don't get it. Like, how do you better the legacies of future generations beyond just this dimension? Not just what are you doing in this earth, but if you were to remove the veil and see what's walking among us every single day, what are your actions here doing on the other side of that veil?
Yeah. It's powerful.
Our lives are powerful. We're chosen.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree, by the way. I'm a Christian man of God, and I firmly believe that. I've been to Nicaragua 3 different times, building houses out there for the less, fortunate.
I love that.
I've done a lot of work, trying to, we're doing Feed My Starving Children here. My whole company, all of my companies that I currently am running are going to do that. We do that every quarter or twice a year. And whatever we can do, right, to help people, to serve people, to, service is like my number one thing, So I totally agree. And I agree with you too on the generations and the society that we're living in and people. what is going to change, right? You know, you remind me when you're talking a little bit of like some stuff that like Andrew Tate talks about, right? Or talked about, I guess. You know, I don't know how well you follow him or how much you follow him.
I've heard of him. I've never really listened to him. I've heard probably 2 of his things that he said. I like how he gets in there and just, you know, the two podcasts or clips that I heard of his, like he's not afraid to get in people's face and tell people what they're afraid to hear.
Agreed.
And he's willing to be the outcast. So although I haven't listened to a ton of his stuff, I already have a level of respect for him because of that nature, right? Like the outcasts are what society needs right now to step up to the plate. But go ahead.
No, that's what I was going to say is just, you know, where do you think we're headed in that regard, right? As a country, as a nation, as a world, you know, and because I think it'll take guys like you and maybe me and entrepreneurs and business owners, and those are the people that have to rise to the occasion and get the word out, right? It's not politicians that are going to fix, I mean, in my opinion, what without getting too much into politics, you know.
Yeah, if you want me to stay away from that, I will. But if not, I'll happily dive into that.
Well, where do you think we're headed as a society? Like, why is it that I feel like 180'd so much, you know, and even in a short period of time? And wouldn't you agree that 10 or 15 years ago, I mean, we didn't have nearly the problem we have today when it comes to even what you're talking about, like with the donkey and the whole thing. I mean, like, obviously that was, you know, an example, but I mean, I feel like so much of those problems have just started to kind of come out of what feels to be like nowhere.
It's not coming out of nowhere. It's a very deliberate design to control this country. You own this country. You own the world. When I was in South Africa, everybody wanted to be American, right? There's literally 2 of their major gangs out there are called the JFKs and the Americans. One has 22,000 members. The other one has like 16,000 members.
Yeah.
They emulate and they look up to us so much. The problem is that the mass majority of individuals are afraid to speak up and they don't know how to speak up. And the way to speak up is to start in small groups. My biggest challenge is a lot of people go, you got to create change. How do we create change? You can't fix a system that's broken, controlled by people that broke it deliberately to control it.
Yeah.
So the way you fix the system is you go back to where it got broken. In the family. You start in your own household. You be the man that you're supposed to be to lead your woman and lead your children, and stop letting your wife tell you how to be a man. A woman doesn't know shit about being a man because she's a woman. And a man doesn't know anything about being a woman because he's a man.
Yeah.
But the more you confuse those, dude, I can own your entire country that way. Right? Like as a man, you know, my woman is amazing. She is one of the most beautiful creatures I've ever laid eyes on this earth besides my daughter, right? Like I love my daughter. I love her. Amazing creatures, right? Creatures, people, human beings, right? But I look at her, she's got so much wisdom, so I listen to her when she says something. I hear her, but I have the final say because I am responsible for leading that household. And even if it's not my fault, it'll still be my consequence. And as men, we have forgotten the leadership role that we are supposed to ascertain inside of our home. No wonder we can't run our communities. We can't even run our homes.
Yeah.
Right? Like if I can't run my house and it has somebody who's supposed to be willing to listen to me and my kids who are setting the kitchen on fire, right? Like how the freak am I going to help the community? And if I can't help the community, how am I going to help the state? Now, if I can't help the state, how am I going to help the nation?
Yeah.
You see,
people have got it all twisted.
They've got it totally twisted, but they allowed themselves to be twisted with lies and deception because they don't want to take the responsibility. See, there's different weapons that have been formed. The new one's called economics. It's not a sword anymore. It's not a knife. It's economics.
Sure.
So now, if I take care of you enough, if I build you a stadium where you can go watch people play, if I feed you just enough, you'll never revolt against me. They figured this out in Rome. And slavery kind of kicked in, and that was oppressive, and then you look at it and you go, what's the new slavery? Nobody understands that mass majority of people now are slaves. They're just slaves to a system, and they think it's their own idea, which makes them easier to control.
Sure, yeah.
So when you sit down and you go, no, it's your idea that you get up every single morning, you bust your rear end, you keep trying to make this money and do this and do that. Like you're in a position now as a man that you're spending time away from your family. There is a cutoff time. And the way that the system works, you still need to provide. You still want to take care of people, right? And we all want to do that. We want to provide for our wife, our children, our community. If a friend comes to you, you know, this gentleman over here running the cameras and everything, he comes to you and goes, man, I just found out, God forbid, and I pray this doesn't happen with him, but he goes, my daughter has cancer. You don't want to just make enough money to take care of you. You want to make enough money to help him.
Sure.
But what about when he comes to you and he says, my wife is going to divorce me because I'm spending too much time at work? Well, you're the leader of this group. It's now your responsibility to teach him how to be the leader of his home. You give him consequences for not doing that. You're like, dude, listen, tonight you go home, you conquer your woman, you conquer her heart, you conquer her in the bedroom, you conquer her mind. And if you don't, tomorrow when you come back to work, I'm going to take this taser and I'm going to zap your sack. He's motivated.
Yeah.
Right? Like all of a sudden he's like, okay, listen, either A, I'm quitting my job, but you're like, dude, your balls are the least of the things that you should be worried about right now. It's your family. Right? And that's the problem, is that we're too wrapped up into entertainment and comfort. So where do I see the country going? Down a very bad path.
Right, yeah. Yeah, well, it definitely will. I mean, because, again, to your point, and I agree with you, I think that we've got, again, without getting too much into politics, you've got very powerful people in the world that are controlling the narrative. They, like you said, they've been doing it for a very long time. Right, yeah, they are the minority, yeah. But the majority are falling for it.
Yeah, they're just stepping back going, well, I saw it on the news, so it must be real, or I saw it on Instagram or on Facebook, and you're like, look, do a little bit of thought. You know, my dad used to say something when we were younger, he'd say, common sense isn't common.
It ain't. Yeah.
And it's not at all. So you sit down and you look at, the first thing that we're going to do if we're going to take back our nation is you got to get comfortable being the outcast. The second thing you got to do is you got to learn to be comfortable being uncomfortable. I sit down all the time and people go, I want to be a ninja. I want to look like you. No, you don't. No, you don't. Because if you wanted to look like me, you'd be willing to do what I do to look like me.
Sure.
Oh, it's genetics. No, it's not. You know, Wim Hof has a great example of this. Here's Wim Hof doing, if you're familiar with him.
Very familiar,
He's got a twin brother.
Yeah, the cold plunge.
They're not the same.
The plunge, but he lives in Amsterdam now, right?
I believe so.
Yeah.
And I loved learning
I didn't know
about
he had
his
a
breathing.
twin brother.
Yeah, he has a twin brother.
Wow.
And they are on opposite ends of the spectrum. So it's not genetics.
Sure.
You know, maybe genetics helps. That could be part of it, but it's not all genetics. What it is it's called choices.
Yeah.
And are you strong enough to make the ones you need to become the man you're supposed to be?
Sure.
Or do you sit down and you're jerking off freaking 2 hours a night because you don't have the discipline to withstand from these desires that are conquering you? They're taking energy and life source out of your body, right? Or you want to go smoke weed or do this or do whatever, and you're using it as an escape.
Yeah,
Look,
to numb out, to escape. Yeah,
there's a lot of medicinal, purposes for marijuana, and when I look at the fact that, not to go too deep into this, but when I look at the fact that is being so heavily regulated right now, but alcohol and smoking is not, you're like, dude, there are like zero medical benefits to these other things, but this one's not. Personally, I don't smoke weed. It's not my thing. Yeah. I have cigars, but I don't use it as an escape. I like cigars every now and then, right?
Yep. Yeah, everything in discipline,
in moderation,
right? Moderation,
right? Probably except for coke and hookers, right? Like
sure,
you shouldn't do that, right?
Yeah.
You're not like, it's in moderation, right? Like there's certain things that you should just...
Crystal meth in moderation is probably not a good idea. Yeah,
it's not good for your teeth, It's hard to function, but it's about facing what you're uncomfortable with.
Sure.
How do you take yourself to the point where you're like, man, this is really uncomfortable. Therefore, I'm going to do it on a consistent basis. The only way for us to bring ourselves back is to get comfortable being uncomfortable, because when we're not, what will happen is that we will always go to the path of least resistance. And that's why the river's crooked, because it always takes the least opposed path. But the shortest distance and the fastest way to get to change is to accept discomfort. And this is why I think guys like Wim Hof are doing such a great job pushing that out there. Guys like you said, Andrew Tate. What's the other guy's name that's just really... Goggins, he's just Goggins, really abrasive to people.
Love that guy.
And I dig it, right? Like, and this is... separate all politics. If you look at Trump's approach when he was talking to people, and some people love him, some people hate him, and I just don't care one way or the other. What I like is that he was abrasive. He got in people's faces and made people have to face things. And I don't care if that came from him or if it came from a parrot. The point is that we need more of that. We need more of the quit being weak and get into your strength and stop being coddled.
Sure.
If we don't start learning how to suffer the way we want to and pick the pain we want, then we will live with the pain that we don't want.
Yeah.
And that is extremely dangerous. Oppression is a real thing. If you look past the narrative of a lot of distractions that are going on right now, there's a lot of countries gearing up to battle this country. You think that the young men and women of this country, in the current physical condition that they're in, and I realize this is a horrible thing to say, but look, it's a fact. How many people do you know that you'd be like, look, I know that there's a whole people out there, then we're going to send them to battle.
Yeah, I don't know
dude,
many.
they can't even get out to the car without having a freaking...
An
episode.
Yeah.
And it's not anyone's fault. They're like, it's McDonald's fault. No, it's not. It's yours.
Yeah, you put it in your mouth.
You put it in your mouth.
Yeah.
Dude, McDonald's didn't come to your door and throw that down your throat. What happened was McDonald's made it convenient.
They have good marketing,
They have good
the whole
marketing.
thing, yeah.
They made it convenient. So what you're really struggling with is not McDonald's. It's your inability to manage the discomfort, to actually go out and be inconvenienced, to put out the extra effort so you don't look like a freaking fat slob. And I'm not trying to be mean to people that are obese, but look, that didn't happen overnight. And I don't care if you're heavy set and you're out there running, I have respect for you.
Yep.
Why? Because you're doing something about it. What I have respect for are the people that are blaming everyone else because they lack the balls, the tenacity, the endurance to go out there and suffer.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many people on a daily basis, they go, you're kind of intense, right? And I'm like, no, I'm really not.
Yeah.
You're just weak. You think I'm intense. Be willing to go out there and be intense.
Yeah.
And stop
that,
accepting
man.
people that are like, oh, you're too much for people. Well, then maybe people need to get it together. Because if this country got invaded tomorrow, we are screwed on a lot of levels. I mean, there's going to be a couple of us out there that are like, freaking going down with the ship, right?
Yeah.
And that's disconcerting to me because when you think of the men back in the 60s and in the 40s, that was a different breed, right? They were different. They were willing to go to war. They were willing to provide. They were willing to think differently. And you look at the slavery now, women are in slavery. A lot of them, they were put this poison in their mind that like, if you go home and you take care of your family, you take care of your man, then you're an indentured servant. You're domesticated. And it's such garbage. Because, and you know this, and you can see it. You see these ladies that are in their 40s and 50s, and they're like, I want to find a good man. And now I'm alone. Am I going to be able to find a good guy? I bought the lie. I put my career in front of a family, and now I actually want to have kids. Well, that gets more dangerous as you get older. Right? I'm not saying that women can't go out there and work and that they shouldn't be allowed to. I absolutely think they should. But what I'm saying is that everyone needs to stop buying the lie that they're being sold and actually follow what God put on your heart for what your mission is on this earth. When you align yourself with that, you will actually be dangerous.
Yeah.
And what's important is that we become more dangerous as men and as women, that we become a threat to the enemy. And that's part of our tagline, be the enemy to the enemy.
Sure.
Anybody that threatens freedom, they're my enemy. Anybody that threatens God, that's my enemy.
Oh, yeah.
If I see somebody hurting children or the innocent, guess what, dude?
Yeah.
Bad day for you, right? Like, you're my enemy. And that's the way I want to be.
Yeah.
So that's the way I work out. It's the way I do business. Like, most people go to the gym to work out, to look good. I don't care about that. I just want to be a better killer when 12 guys come into my house and try and take my family from me.
Sure.
Right? And killing and murder are two different things. I should talk about that for a second.
Yeah, talk about
right?
that. Yeah, yeah.
So murder is the unjustified killing of another human being. Killing is when somebody needs to be killed, so you do it. I'll give you an example. You see disgruntled individual, they walk into an office building, they start shooting at people.
Yep.
If you try talking to that guy, you're an idiot.
Yep.
You're just going to get shot. This isn't about, like, diplomacy left when he pulled out a gun and started shooting at people.
Innocent people.
Innocent people
Yeah.
that are not capable of protecting themselves.
Yep.
So the way I look at that is like, you made some bad choices. It sucks. Maybe you had a rough upbringing. Don't care. You're dead.
Yep, for
right?
sure.
Like, you go after that dude, you drop him, you kill him. That's not murder. That's killing. You come into my house and you threaten my woman, I'm putting you through the window. Right? And by the time, don't worry though, you'll be dead before you hit the ground because I'm going to make sure that fall sucks. Right? And that mindset is that's killing, and we have to be more dangerous to the enemy. Right? We're so afraid of being men. We're so afraid of being strong. We're like, people are going to think I'm dangerous. You're supposed to be.
you're
It's
literally
about
supposed to be,
being
yeah.
a warrior,
Yeah.
right? Like, what else are you supposed to be? Do I look like a teddy bear to you?
Yeah.
That's not my world. Like, if you want something soft, I'll get you a dog. As long as it doesn't crap on the floor and cause problems, right? Like, we're not having that different conversation, but
Yeah.
like, you're sitting
A
down.
well-trained dog.
Yeah, a well-trained dog. Like, our job
Yeah.
is to be this protective force that provides.
And it's the world we live in. We have at a certain point, right? We
the
have,
world we created.
like you say, I mean, we will, if we're not already in World War III, right? At some point we probably will be, right? And people have to figure out how to protect and provide, right? And it's biblical too, by the way. To all that you just mentioned, you talk about, like, when we look at the Bible and even the man's role and the woman, right? By the way, the woman, her role, right? It's biblically, right? We look at the roles of each, and they're very well defined actually in the Bible, And I love what you say about, hey, it's not about they can't go get a job or work, but at the end of the day, that should be icing on the cake. That should be in addition to her main role if she chooses to do that.
If she chooses to do that,
Sure.
right? But here's where I have a challenge, right? Like I do a lot of men's courses, teaching men how to be men, and I always get these guys, and I say teaching them how to be men. They already know, we just got to wake it up. But they come in and they're like, I have an issue with my woman. I need to teach her to be submissive. Tell me more.
Yeah.
Right? Because like teaching a woman how to be submissive, like she's not an animal.
Yeah.
All right. So tell me more. And then they're like, well, I come home from work, and then when she gets home from work, she's not willing to cook for me. I'm like, hold up. All right, let's take a few steps back. Number one, you have this mindset where you expect her to be this type of woman, but you're not the kind of man that deserves that kind of woman. If she wants to work and she wants to do that for fun, and that's your wife, I get it. That's cool. That's awesome. But as a man, it is your job to take care of that family, not hers.
Yeah.
As a man, it is your job to take care of those children, not hers. You're the provider. So now you're going to say she's got to come home and cook you a meal after she worked all day because you're not being the man you're supposed to be? Your job is to step up to the plate and be the man that deserves that kind of woman. What kind of man do you have to become to have the woman you want?
Yeah.
And I'd ask the same question to a woman. I get a lot of girls that come to me. They're like, I want a great guy. Yeah, but you have nothing to offer.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm attractive. No, you're attractive now. You're like 25. That's going to change soon.
Sure.
Right? Like I can tell you're not disciplined.
Yeah.
So if they're not willing to work out and they're not willing to do certain things, their bodies are naturally going to change. So what are you bringing to the table? And it can't just be your looks. Because when you get pregnant, you're going to get bigger. That's just the nature of how that works. So if you're like, it's because I'm in shape, that's not enough.
Yeah.
What are you bringing to the table that allows that man to be able to surrender to you and listen to you? Are you a woman of strength and of wisdom, that Proverbs 31 woman, that she has a mind that she'll take and make sure that she's providing for her family the best that she can because she's a ninja in her own way?
Sure.
Right? She comes to the table and yeah, she's attractive. She takes care of herself. She doesn't think she won the election and turned into, somebody that's just unattractive and doesn't treat you with respect and doesn't care about you anymore. And it's the same thing for men. This concept of a dad bod, come on. Really? You're just fat and out of shape and you don't do what it takes to actually be a fighter for your family in case attackers come in. I don't care if your wife finds that sexy or not. You're not who you need to be to thread off the attackers. And look, all animals in the animal kingdom, they look at their prey first to see if it's going to cause them harm.
Right.
There is no different in the human animal kingdom, right? When they think, I'm going to go jack that dude and take all his stuff, they'll look at one dude like, I'll give you an example. You know Bill Burr, the comedian, okay? Yep. So you have a chance to take his house and rob him or to rob Jocko Willink. Which one are you going to pick?
Probably Bill Burr.
Why?
I mean, pretty simple, right? You just look at him and which one am I going to get away with?
Yeah, Jocko's going to fuck you up, right? Like Bill Burr is going to crack a couple jokes and you're going to put him through a wall, right? Like, and I'm not saying that, to be mean to Bill Burr because he's freaking funny. Yeah. But, at the end of the day, when you sit down and you look at some of this stuff and you go, am I the threat that other men look at and don't want to mess with my family? Your wife is the same way. She needs to be the threat to everyone else's family that keeps your family together. And I'll tell you from finding a woman for the first time in my life that is a freaking stud, right? Like it allows me to have peace in my heart and I can actually put down my armor when I come home. I shouldn't have to fight at home also.
Yeah.
I shouldn't have to sit there and argue about everything in my life. It's nice when you can sit down and you guys can have an argument and then you can sit down and go, hey, we're not fighting each other. We're fighting for each other.
Sure.
We're figuring out a way to put this into perspective so that we can live the life that we want to live. Dude, that's worth something.
It is. Yeah.
And that woman, you kind of sit down and you're like, I don't let her take out the trash because I don't feel that women should touch trash. I don't let her pick up dog crap because I don't think that she should have to touch that either. Right? She's happy to cook me dinner. Right?
Yeah.
But how many men think this way? When a woman is going up an escalator, you stand behind her in case she falls. When she's going down an escalator, you stand in front of her in case she falls. When a woman is crossing or you're walking on the street, you put her on the inside so that people don't have access to her. These are basic traits that men are not being taught anymore.
Sure. Yeah.
And this is exactly what a lot of women are hoping for to get. It's not that they want like something extravagant. They want a man that's going to be a provider and a protector and a shield against evil. Anthropologically, that's wired in them.
Yeah.
Because back in tribal times, you couldn't fight. Like, you and her got eaten.
Right.
right? So
It's crazy.
Or a
Yeah.
tribe would come in and take over you guys. So what are we contributing towards our kids, towards our family, towards our community? So I think that answered your question. I'd
It
be
did.
honest, I
No,
can't remember it.
1,000,000%. And are there any other things when you're teaching men? Like, are those the main things that you're teaching? Well, awakening, when you talk about getting it back out of them, right? Is there anything you left off the list when you're teaching men?
I think one is that humility, right? Like as men, a lot, and it's always like when I teach my weapons classes, women come in and they're totally like, they're there to learn. Dudes are like, I got a penis so I can shoot the nuts off a gnat from a mile away.
Yeah.
That's not how that works, man. Like,
Yeah.
just because you have a penis doesn't mean you know how to operate a gun. And that's always a dude looking down the barrel and
Sure.
like muzzling people, and you're going, what the freak are you doing, right? Because some of it's firearms tactics, some of it's hand-to-hand. Humility. Like the greatest way to be wise is to know you don't know everything.
Yep.
And be willing to learn, right? There's a lot I don't know. Surround yourself with great men, people better than you. Surround yourself with people that are willing to actually call you on your crap. That's what I love about the friends I have. I do not let people in my life, they're like, Master Johnson, you're just so great. I worship you. I'm like, dude, get away from me. You're weirding me out, number one. Number two, you're not going to help me grow. Like, you're going to get me into something because I'm going to start listening to your garbage coming out of your mouth. And I'm going to be like, freaking, I am pretty great, right?
Yeah.
And you're like, no, you're not, like, and you need a woman like that too.
You do.
Right? Like you need a woman that's like, babe, I love you. And she stands with you in public. You guys should always, like nobody in public should know that you guys are having fights.
Yeah.
Hey, real quick, I don't know if you know, but I have a totally separate YouTube channel that you probably haven't checked out before. And it's just called Austin Zaback. And I've actually started a new series on that channel where I break down wholesale deals, okay? Wholesale deals that we've done in our business. And I show you step by step how we got the deal, how we sold the deal. I break down all the numbers on the deal, and I even show you the HUD of the deal, so you know we're not playing around. Now, I don't know how long you've been following me, but I do anywhere from 1 to 2 wholesale deals every single day. And my goal is to get to 100 deal breakdowns on that YouTube channel. So definitely, if you haven't already, go check it out. I'll link it down in the description below. And without further ado, let's just go ahead and get back to the show.
But in private, you two hash that stuff out and you figure out what is going on, right? She honors you, you honor her. And she tells you, dude, you're kind of being a dick back there. And you're like, okay, well, explain that to me.
Yeah.
She's like, well, you did this and you did this, and you respect her enough where you're listening, and you're like, I should probably go apologize, huh? She's like, yeah, you should. That's humility.
Yeah.
It's getting out of your own way and getting out of your ego, because ego attaches you to flesh. The more you can actually release that and get away from that, you can attach into your divineness and you can get stronger. And then the conquering of the mind. And you conquer the mind by bringing the body into submission. Right? Getting in cold water. I'm sure you've done it, right?
I have, yeah. Right at the Optima.
Right at the Optima,
Yeah.
right? So what is your record for sitting in cold at the Optima?
I mean, I listen to a lot of Andrew Huberman, so I try not to. I actually try to limit it. I don't want to go too long at one time.
Yes.
I could probably go longer, but I think I'll do like 8 minutes is kind of my record of what I like to keep it at.
Yeah, like 3 to 8 minutes
Yeah.
is good, right?
Yeah.
Like over that, it's just ego.
Sure.
And so you're getting the benefits, and you get out of the water, you start banging out some push-ups so you can activate it, some knee tucks, some other exercises that we do to help with the testosterone. But what's beautiful about cold water is you can't run.
Right.
You're like, it forces you to face discomfort. Well, what is making you face the discomfort? Because it's not your body,
Your mind.
your mind. How many exercises daily do you do like that?
For your mind, for like me personally, I mean, I do a lot. I wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning. I go to the gym,
Yeah.
not comfortable, right?
Right.
Nobody wants to, we don't inherently wake up at 4 a.m. typically, unless your circadian rhythm is all jacked up, I guess.
Right.
So, you wake up, I'm uncomfortable doing that. I go to the gym.
Yeah.
Like this morning, I went to the gym. I've been trying out a new thing where I don't do any pre-workout or caffeine
Yeah.
in the morning. I go to the gym.
Also uncomfortable, by
Very
the way.
uncomfortable, right?
Because you've got to summon it from within.
Because I want to take caffeine and do pre-workout, but I don't, because they say
That's an exercise.
you got to wait, right?
Yeah, like
And so that's an
hour and a half.
exercise. Yep, and I wait till after the gym, And so I've been playing around with that a little bit. Last night I did the sauna for 45 minutes at my building, which is way hotter than your building,
Oh my
by
goodness,
the way.
ours sucks, but we'll
Yeah.
come to yours.
Yeah, come to mine.
So here's my question.
yeah,
How many guys did you grow up with that are where you're at right now?
0.
Do you know why? You just said
Yeah.
it. You're willing to face a lot of that discomfort that a lot of people are like, nah, man, why?
Yeah.
Why? I'm gonna have another beer. I'm going to have another joint. I'm going to have another cigarette. I'm going to sit here and watch a football game. Oh, we're getting older. Dude, I feel like I'm getting younger.
Yeah.
I'm smoking guys half my age in physical fitness. And I'm more dangerous now because I know it works, right? So when you sit down, the wisdom is powerful, but so is the humility, because you also look at these young bucks and you're like, what makes him dangerous? All right, he's careless, which makes him more dangerous. He's full of piss and vinegar, so he's got a lot of energy, and he's not smart enough to back off, so he's going to give it his all. Yeah. And then you start looking at these, and you're like, all right, like one shot, one kill. How do I take this guy out quick so I don't have to sit there and bang with this dude for 50 minutes? But I train in case I have to.
Sure.
Right? So that willingness that you just exercised, that you just talked about, you're like, my summoning of energy isn't coming from something external.
Sure.
Right? We do so much. We look for fixes from inside wounds and inside pains, and we look to fix them on the outside for problems that are on the inside. But the solutions are the same place where the problem is.
On the inside.
On the inside.
Yeah.
And so the more I exercise not taking pre-workout, what's going to happen?
Yep, I'm going to get stronger.
You're going to get stronger.
More
Why?
resilient.
Because you know how to summon it. Whereas the other guy's like, oh, I got to take my pre-jacked.
Yeah.
Like, okay, it's destroying your kidneys, but whatever, good luck. And then these guys, you see them as they get older, their bodies are getting trashed and they're getting destroyed and things are going out. And then you ask medicine, they're like, as you get older, it goes out. Yeah. Bullshit. Something's going on here. Why did so many, when you were a kid, how many kids had autism?
Probably a whole heck of a lot less. I don't remember because I was the kid and there wasn't internet, but definitely not as many.
Not as many?
Yeah.
How many kids did you know look the way kids look now in high school? There's something in the food.
For sure.
Dude, there's something in the food. There's stuff going on and nobody's paying attention.
Yeah.
But you go over to different countries and the ones that aren't allowing those types of foods in their countries, they're not having the same issues we're having medically.
Well, it's all rigged here.
It's totally rigged, and it's built for profit.
Yeah.
So you have to, it's very inconvenient to be paleo, which is what I've moved over to, is like a weird hybrid of paleo.
I read a tweet the other day. I don't remember. I don't remember like if it was real. It might have been an analogy or an example, but it was like a big company, and it was like somebody was like, we found the cure for fill in the blank, right? And the response from the high up at the company, it might have just been an example of the world we live in, was like, is that a sustainable business model?
Yeah, they care about health and they put profits over.
We found a cure, and their immediate response was, is it a sustainable business model to have a cure?
No, it's not. It's horrible for profits, right? But it's great for humanity.
Sure.
And when we start learning that people are worth more than money, you'll actually be more profitable, because there's other forms of profit. It's not just about money.
Yeah.
There's what's going on in here. There's what's going on in your dantian. There's what's going on inside of your psychology and your mind. It's about learning how to see what is real currency. Currency is a made-up concept in your and my mind, right?
Sure.
Like somebody says, hey, you do this work, I'm going to put this into your account. You never got that. It just shows up in the bank account, right? It showed up on a piece of paper. Now it's there. And if you go to a bank and try and pull your money out, what's going to happen? They don't even freaking have it, dude. Which, look, I'm not against it.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of people are pissed about that. I'm like, this is what allows so many people to be multimillionaires.
Sure, yeah, it's capitalism.
Right,
Yeah,
because if we did that with gold, freaking we couldn't do that. There's only so much gold, right? So I'm actually all for that system. It actually allows for everyone in the United States could be a multi-gazillionaire if they wanted to. And it actually demonstrates how weak people are. That we literally live in a system where every man, woman, and child in this world could be a multimillionaire 20 times over, because they're literally printing this stuff. And now they're not even printing it. They're just putting it into machines. You could do that and you're not. Why?
Because you just don't have what it takes.
They don't have what it takes, and they're not willing to be what it takes in order to get to the point to have what it takes, right? That's suffering. That's long suffering. It's not about a quick fix. It's about doing what's necessary over the period of time and willing to endure the discomfort. And then you have this other side of that where you look at what is real wealth. It's frequency.
Yeah.
Real wealth is frequency. It's the relationships that you have. Love. It's relationships.
Yeah.
Like I will burn relationships fast if I think that person cares more about money than me. And at the same time, I have lost thousands and tens of thousands of dollars in order to save a relationship. Because I'm like, you know what? The money doesn't matter. This matters more. Now, it depends on what it is. Like if I look at the person and I think that they're trying to use the friendship in order to leverage not paying me back, I'm like, yeah, you're not going to manipulate me. But if it's like they're really your friend, they're being honorable, they're following through with what they say they're going to do, and they're following through with their word, totally different world, right? I literally let a guy out of a contract that he owed me $500,000 on.
Yeah.
I called him up and I said, look, the girl that my kid's mom, she went to the school, and apparently my daughter and his daughter went to the same school. She saw him, he jumped in his car, and he took off, right? And this was probably 5-6 years afterwards. I called him up, and I said, look, it's me. And he heard, and he didn't say anything. And I said, you know the money you owe me? Your debt's forgiven. I don't want you to live that way. I don't want to live that way, right? Like, God's forgiven my debts. I'm forgiving yours. Dude, he started crying on the phone. He was like, you're the real deal. He's like, a lot of people talk about it. Not everybody's about it. And I said, well, dude, like, look, here's the reality. The currency of a relationship, you can buy things with relationships you can't buy with money. So if you leverage things correctly in your head to actually prioritize what is actually valuable, there are things that money can't buy.
Oh, for sure.
And when we understand that, you'll actually be successful and you'll actually be rich. Success is actually living a life that makes sense and endures beyond this time that you get to spend here, right? What are you leaving for your grandchildren's grandchildren, right? Like, you can't do that with money. You get one generation of one idiotic kid and they blow all your cash.
Sure. Yep.
The inheritance.
It's been proven.
Yeah, totally. Right? Over and over again.
Yeah.
The inheritance that my grandfather left our generations will go out for the next 15, 20 generations. He didn't have money, but he had mindset. He had discipline. So, success.
I love that. You know, we're taught that we're taught the do have be method, right? And do have be says if we do fill in the blank, then we can have fill in the blank, and then we'll be fill in the blank, happy, right? So, you know, but really it's be, have, do, right? I can be it right now. I don't need to do or have anything to be it, right? I can be happy today.
Yeah.
And then I get to go have whatever I want in life.
Yeah.
And then ultimately I can do whatever the hell I want because I was already happy, right? But we're not taught that in society. We're taught, you know, that we're taught the polar opposite really of that, right? And that we always have to be doing something so that we can have something so that we can be something, right?
It's deception.
And it goes back to what you said a little while ago of there's something out there that I need to be happy in here, right? And it's this idea, it's why people do drugs and alcohol and everything of the sort, and to try to figure out, they're trying to fill something in here with something out there that'll never work.
Yeah, it's a God-sized hole. You can only fill it with God. Right? But deception, like Satan's very tricky, right? And Satan, we use that word here in this time, but like in Buddhism, the word was actually for the deceiver, the accuser, right? So Satan's been around a long time. He's had many names, and he's good at deceiving people.
Sure.
And he mixes the lies with the truth, but the way he does that, one of the ways he does that is he switches up the order and how things are done. So you're like, I know it's the truth, but you don't know that he flipped the order. When B, you already are a bee. You already are the bean. Your flesh is not you. Memories of pain and agony and so forth are stored in your body. You can sit down with somebody, and in fact, I'll do it with you now.
Yeah.
I want you to close your eyes for a second and go into a memory of when you were really, really happy.
Yeah.
Okay? Point to where that memory is located in the body.
Where I was really happy?
Yeah, in your body. Okay?
Yeah.
Now, I want you to take a moment and I want you to think about a really painful, deceiving memory that was in your body. A memory, where is that?
Probably in my gut.
Okay?
Yeah.
Now I want you to go back to your happiness.
Yep.
That's inside your heart, right? So there's a drill, and you can open your eyes that we actually take that energy and we push it into the negative energy. So your gut, which is interesting because that's the Dantian, that's an area where the life force is. I bet when you get stressed, you have stomach issues.
Yeah, probably, yeah.
Right?
When I think about it.
Who you are isn't this flesh. You are moving around that vessel, inside of that vessel.
Sure.
So you learn that you are a frequency, and memory is stored inside of this being. So you have to learn how to move that frequency within that being in different parts of who you are when you have to face a threat, when you have to face adversity, and stop looking outside of you to find the peace that God already put inside of you. The secrets are already there. You're made in the image of the Almighty. The divine rulers made you a very specific way, right?
Sure.
And the word God is a pagan word, but when you look it up from its original tongue, it's Elohim, right? And that, if you look at it from English and translate it back to the Old Testament's written in Hebrew and Chaldean, when you translate it back to its original tongue, it actually is Elohim, and Elohim is divine rulers, which makes sense when you look at the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. right? So we see the Messiah in the very beginning of time. And then we start to look at us and we go, Freud was trying to prove that God didn't exist, and he goes out and finds out, so you got this ego, this id, and the super ego, and you have these 3 tongues talking inside of you. We're made in the image of God. You just proved God exists. Right? Yeah, so when you sit down and you look at something where people are trying to pull you away from the truth, everything you need is already inside of you right now, and it was in you from the moment you were brought onto this earth. You just got blinded by this earth.
Wow. And
as your eyes started looking, there's 2 eyes. The eyes here and the eyes within. But the eyes within can actually see what the eyes without can't. And when you start honing into that, you can actually have clarity.
Very powerful. Yeah. Really, really powerful. Truly, people are going to get a lot of value. I want to transition really quick because I know we've been in here for a while. I don't want to keep you forever. Why did you get a helicopter? I have to know. And then and then on top of that, why did you decide you wanted to learn how to fly it?
So 2 things.
And where do you keep it?
Yeah, it's in Albuquerque right now because apparently to try and house one here in Scottsdale is extremely difficult.
And they won't let you land it on the Optima, huh?
I've asked, and they're like, we got to talk to management, but I don't think they've asked. Okay. So the reason I keep it there is I think there's a 6-year waiting list or something here. It's ridiculous. But the reason I wanted one is when I was a kid, I was always into, combat and cool stuff like that. But I remember watching this show called Airwolf. It was before your time. And this helicopter would come over the mountain and just like hose down all the bad guys, right? And I was like, dude, freaking one day, I want that, right? Since I was a kid, I wanted a helicopter. Yeah. So I was blessed to be able to get one last year. And I feel very blessed to be able to do that. But having a helicopter and not being able to fly it is kind of stupid. It was intimidating for me, right? Like there was a fear factor there.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Because again, there's so much that can go wrong. So I got the helicopter pilot license, like I said, about 10 weeks ago. And it was a facing thing that it constantly challenges you because if you don't fly for a certain amount of time, you're not current anymore and you actually can't fly. So even if you have a helicopter, you own it, you're a pilot, and you haven't flown it for a certain period of time, you're not allowed by the FAA.
You got to go back to school, wow.
You got to go back and do certain requirements in order to make it happen. So I liked the fact that it was an ongoing, living, breathing challenge for me. So it keeps me humble. It keeps me aware. It keeps me in tune. Like the weather's always changing. And so, one day flying in the exact same area is not the same as another day flying in the exact same area. You got to pay attention to density, altitude, and all these different parameters, the temperature and dew point and all that make you think differently about what you're about to do.
Wow.
So that's why I fly it, and it's a good mental exercise.
I bet you have a ton of fun with that. Yeah.
I have a blast.
Now you need to eventually buy a house where you can land it in your backyard. What are the logistics with that? There's a guy on YouTube that I follow, and every now and then I'll see him on my For You page where he'll just go land a helicopter at like a random place. Are you... what are the legalities of all of that?
The cool thing with helicopters and where we really differ from fixed-wing aircraft is you can basically land wherever you want as long as you have permission by the owner and you're far enough away from like homes, right? Like there's a requirement, I can't remember if it's 1,500 yards or something along those lines, but you have to be far enough away because they're loud, right? So when you land, you don't want to be pissing off all the neighbors and so forth. But as long as it's your property and you own it and you are not putting people at risk or property at risk, as I understand it, and I'm a private pilot, I'm not commercial at this point. So I believe you can land pretty much anywhere as long as you get permission and it doesn't put anybody in harm's way.
Wow. Pretty wild.
Yeah. So literally, like if Optima gave me permission to land on the roof of Optima, I could.
Wow. Yeah, definitely very different from an airplane.
Yeah, you need a runway.
Yeah, an airplane, you need a runway. Yeah.
And I think a lot of people talk about helicopters being more dangerous. I don't think they are. Well, I mean, I guess they are. There's more moving parts, but technically you can auto-rotate as long as you recognize it, and you can still land if the engine fails, but you have more places you can land. If you're in an airplane, you need a runway.
Right.
Unless you are a super, and I've seen some pilots do it, where they come in and they figure out a way not to have to use a runway because they figured out the glide path and the ballooning and all that. And like those dudes are amazing, but they are so few and far between.
Sure, yeah.
But with a helicopter, you can actually auto-rotate in. And even with an airplane, you still need some of a runway in order to land.
Yeah. I mean, you're not just going to fall out of the sky with a helicopter like I think people think, right? With the auto-rotate on the way down.
They auto-rotate, and there's actually, and this is probably more than what you want for your podcast, but there's these two sheaves, and they actually disconnect, right? So even if the engine fails, that rotor can still spin.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Pretty fascinating.
Yeah, very fascinating. I mean, an airplane, on a lot of these small aircraft, you just have one engine.
Right.
So, I mean, it's the same as a helicopter. I mean, you have one engine versus one engine, right?
Yeah, so I mean, there's different types. There's the Lycoming, and then there's, but when you come in, the Lycoming is actually a really good engine, especially for an R44. You just have to have enough weight and keep the your propeller spinning, your blades spinning fast enough, because if you go under a certain type of RPM, that's a problem.
Got it.
And you're screwed.
Yeah.
And then you're just like enjoying the flight down, making your peace with God.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. You got to be careful.
Yeah. For sure.
Man, I love that. What's one of the biggest setbacks that you've had in your life?
Biggest setback. I've had a few. Probably one of them was being homeless, and
how did that happen?
mindset. It had nothing. People talk about money, but it was my mindset. It was a victim. It was a victimhood. It was the way that I thought as a human being at a time. And you have diet, rest, exercise, and righteousness, because the way you think and the way you feel releases different chemical agents in your body and allows you to resonate at a certain frequency. So you got to have that mindset of living well and living good. Then you have to have good diet, good rest, good exercise. And I think at that point in my life, I wasn't doing any of that, right? I was fixated on the flesh. I was fixated on weakness. And ultimately, it led me down a path that I shouldn't have been down, right? And when you stay in a what's happened to you versus what's happened for you mindset, you become a victim very quickly. You don't want to change. Everybody's wrong. And you don't look at where it starts, which is 100% accountability with you.
Yeah.
Right. That's one of the areas I just love about Jocko Willink's content. Like, he's just like, dude, it's your fault. I just love that, because when I got in the position that I was in, and this is back in 2003 where I was homeless, like everything shifted for me, because I realized I couldn't go any lower. I was like, you can keep bitching about this, or you can do something about it.
Yeah, but you're at the bottom.
I was at the bottom.
The only way you can go up is
and a lot of people don't know they're at the bottom. And that's even more dangerous, because they'll keep spiraling and they'll find a way to drill even deeper.
Wow.
But being at the bottom was good for me, because I'm like, dude, I can't lose anything. And I had to start using some guerrilla tactics as far as my marketing skills went, because I didn't have any money.
Sure.
And when people say you need money to make money, no, you don't. You need conviction.
Hey, real quick, I don't know if you know, but I actually wholesale real estate nationwide, and I have buyers all over the nation looking for incredible deals. So if you're a wholesaler and you locked up a deal and you're struggling to find a buyer, I would love to partner with you up on it, and I would love to help you sell it. All you have to do is text me 480-418-5339 and just let me know that you have a deal that you need help selling. Again, the phone number is 480-418-5339. Let me know that you have a deal, you want me to bring a buyer. Somebody on my team will reach out to you right away, and we will help you get it sold. Now let's just go ahead and get back to the show.
And you need hunger, and you need to be willing to do whatever it takes and be whatever you have to be in order to get that end result, right? And I remember there was a place in Albuquerque, it's a pizza place, and they call out your order, right? And I remember I'd go there for marketing purposes, because I didn't really have money to eat there, but I'd go there, and I knew that everybody was in the restaurant, and so I started my company. And they go, Shockwave Defense, your order's ready. Because I gave them my name, and I'd sit there and I'd wait. I'd make them call my business name like 4 or 5 times. And I was hungry. Dude, Shockwave Defense, your order's ready. And I'm like, one more. And then after a few minutes, they'd be like, Shockwave Defense, your order's ready. And I'm like, oh, good, freaking. And as I was walking up, and I could see people looking at each other going, what the freak, Shockwave Defense? And I'm like, that's right. That's the question I want in their head. I want them going, what is Shockwave? And so I created all these different methodologies of guerrilla marketing that I used for our company in the beginning. That you need hunger. You don't need money, right? You need to have a conviction of a work ethic, not a criminal mind, right?
Yeah.
Like, you can make more money doing things legally than you ever can from a criminal standpoint. And it's actually easier, right? Like, I mean, unless you're moving like 50 metric tons of, cocaine. Yeah. Right. But I mean, what's the consequence once you get caught? I'd rather be in a position where I'm not locked away for the rest of my life and I can enjoy my family. Makes more sense to me, right?
Sure. Yeah, I love that. And what I love about that is that, I think that I've told you before that podcast, I've interviewed like 100 people, give or take. And, everybody that sat in that chair, they've all hit rock bottom at one point.
Yeah.
And that's the commonality that I see. And I think that, I feel like you mentioned it a little while ago with, the way that you described us kind of choosing our parents and stuff and God and the whole thing. But it is interesting, wouldn't you say that when you look at somebody who's accomplished what seems to be a lot here on Earth, right? And you look at the common thread over, 100 people that I've interviewed, and obviously I've listened to, thousands of podcasts, and almost every single person at one point or another has been in the valley right? They've hit rock bottom.
And they're willing to be the outcast, right? Like they get to a point where they're like, I don't care what people think about me. I'm going to do what it takes. And if people hate me, they hate me as long as I love me.
Yeah.
Like my first lawsuit was my mother. My mom was the first person to ever sue me.
Wow.
Right? Like that takes a level of dealing with an outcast mentality to get there, right? Like, I mean, when you think of the life that I've had, having a knife to my throat at 5 years old, to my best friend committing suicide, to all the things that I've been through, right? Like it just shifts everything inside of your psychology of accepting people's identity for you. You got to be so careful not to accept other people's beliefs of your identity, or else you'll actually start believing their beliefs.
Sure.
And you got to be very careful with that. Don't start accepting people's beliefs on you.
Yeah.
You were called for something great, and you being a reject is what's actually going to make you great, right? Like I love Shockwave because we're kind of like Misfit Island. If you don't belong in the world, you'll fit in great with us, right? Because the people that sit down and they're like, dude, I don't fit in. You'll fit in fine here.
Sure.
Right? Social awkwardness, we freaking love it.
I love that. Yeah. We'll have to get connected after the podcast. For
sure.
What is, in conclusion here, what is the number one tip if you had to give somebody watching or listening right now just one piece of advice, and you had to kind of summarize everything you've learned and all the wisdom you've accumulated, and it was just, hey, here's one piece of advice that I'm going to be able to give you that you're going to have to take and live your life with, and you had to just give one, what would that be?
We talked about a lot of stuff that was different today than what I originally had kind of made notes on. But
we'll do round two if we have to do round two at some point,
God made you for a cause. Live it boldly. Don't care what people think about it. I don't even freaking care if it's your parents. Live your cause boldly and never surrender to fear. Never give up and keep pushing forward. Don't quit. Right? Failure is when you quit. I don't care how many times things go wrong, how much they screw up. That's irrelevant. You'll learn and you'll move forward. Let people hate you for who you are. Sure. And not sit down and, I don't know if this is one tip, but don't let other people's beliefs become your reality. You were chosen. Live that life you were chosen for.
So powerful. Yeah, it's a mic drop right there.
Cool.
Where can people find you if they want to get a hold of you? They want to reach out to Shockwave. Maybe they want you to train them or mentor them. How do they reach out to you?
So our social media handles are typically Shockwave Defense on Instagram. I think we're on TikTok, Facebook. But you can also go to our website at shockwavedefense.com. And we have, I'll get you a link that your listeners can listen to, and we'll get them something free on mindset training so that they can download it. And then if they want to learn more, we're always happy to, our speaking events, we're happy to do those. We're happy to do corporate trainings for executives where we do these 1 day, 2 day, 4 day immersion labs. And then we have a lot of online training that we do now also. So best way to check that out is probably go to shockwavedefense.com and reach out to us and let us know what we can help you with, and we're glad to.
Yeah, I love that. And I'll put all your information down in the description below of all of the videos that are everywhere that we're live right now. So, and I really appreciate you being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
And we'll do it again at some point for sure. We live right down the road.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah, literally right down the road. I appreciate it, man. Yeah,
thank you for having me. It was an honor to be here.
Hey, if you're still watching the episode, do me a huge favor. If you're listening on any platform, subscribe if you haven't already. Leave a 5-star review. Definitely go check out Michael. Definitely go check out Shockwave. Phenomenal podcast. And if you're watching on YouTube, subscribe if you haven't already. Comment down below and smash the like button.